To start, I don't consider myself a good person. And in this story, there is collateral damage. So, this is a story about one bad person taking revenge on another bad person. Background: I am 34. I grew up with a single mother because my father died, but I had many male figures in the form of older brothers. Also, after my father's death, my mother received a generous life insurance payout. So, overall, I had a good childhood. However, I was never particularly social and spent a lot of time at the computer from early adolescence. This habit peaked in college, and eventually I spent 80% of my time gaming, working, reading, or doing something else on a screen. As a result, by age 20, I had become unattractive and quite fat. For these reasons, I almost never dated girls and was a virgin until I met my ex-fiancée. Additionally, I had a religious upbringing because my mother became very religious after my father's death. So I always thought that sleeping around was a bad idea. The only upside: I mastered several programming languages fairly well and refined my knowledge in college. I wouldn't say I'm some high-level IT pro or programmer, but with a little bit of coding knowledge and a lot of creativity, you can create passive income streams. I also had a steady IT job where I could work from home 3 days a week. At 24, I was still fat and a social outcast. But through my mother, I met a woman from her Bible study group who eventually became my ex-fiancée. She is 36 now. We hit it off immediately and started dating. She had a 2-year-old son, and they became the only thing that mattered to me. It didn't take long for us to become intimate. All those years of pretending I was saving myself flew out the window as soon as the opportunity arose. Honestly, she really pulled me out of my shell, and within a couple of months, I became more social. I even took on the role of a father to her son, and 6 months into the relationship, she got pregnant. Being a religious person, I immediately proposed and wanted to get married before the baby was born. And then she dropped a bombshell. She was still officially married to a guy who was in prison. This didn't bother me much because she always talked about her difficult past, and I thought I was the one saving her from it. So I took it as part of the package. She soon started the divorce process, and we planned to marry as soon as it was finalized. After the birth of the child, I was on a roll and thought I had finally found my place in the world. I even started losing weight and spent less time on the internet than ever before. She was always kind to me, and I thought we shared everything with each other. God, how wrong I was. There were red flags that I missed because I was in love. First, she admitted she only came to my church because she was on probation and had legal issues, and she thought it would help her case. Second, despite the fact that I was earning comfortable six-figure sums with my side hustles and main IT job, she insisted on her own side job, and my mother had to help with the kids. Third, she knew way too many people. I mean, what kind of housewife with a secretarial job has 200 contacts in her phone? Fourth, we constantly postponed the wedding due to sick relatives or other problems, even though she did eventually finalize the divorce from the prisoner. Then, something happened that broke her spell over me. She got pregnant again, and this time with twins. We had been together for only about 4 years, and we were already about to have 4 children, 2 more than I had ever planned. She told me she was on oral contraceptives, so we didn't use condoms. Anyway, after the birth of the twins, I started consulting with a doctor about a vasectomy, and my ex-fiancé supported this. I wanted to freeze my sperm before the surgery, just in case we changed our minds in 5 years. I went to the appointment, and the doctor told me I had a low sperm count, and they were almost immobile, but it might be temporary. He advised me to improve my diet and come back in a couple of weeks. At the second appointment, the situation hadn't changed, and the doctor began to dig deeper. You already see where this was going. Basically, he said that I was most likely sterile. This turned out not to be entirely true, because now I have a child who is definitely mine. No, it still triggered the following events. I knew I supposedly had 3 biological children, and the doctor tensed up, started explaining something, but I was in shock and understood almost nothing. I think I walked out of the office without even finishing the conversation. I didn't even get in my car. I just walked until it got dark and then called an Uber home. My fiancé was worried and was already asleep when I arrived. I lied and said the car broke down, my phone died, and I was stuck at the mechanic. I fell asleep, and the next day I immediately went online to look for similar stories, trying to convince myself that everything was wrong. The first post I read said that such tests aren't always accurate and that a DNA test is a must. I was sure it would prove the doctor wrong, but when the result came back a week later, I found out the children were not mine. The first person I told was my mother. I went to her and cried for the first time in my adult life. She comforted me and then told me something I should have never known. Essentially, I myself was the result of an affair, and my father died of an overdose of painkillers when he found out. I don't know what the hell my mother thought telling me this would do to comfort me, but in the end, it only gave me an unhealthy attitude toward women for a while. After this, she insisted that I man up and fulfill my obligations to the children because I was the only father they had ever known. Until that moment, I had always been a doormat and actually thought about her words for about 24 hours before I completely snapped. I called my fiancée and told her I would stay with my mother because of family issues. She offered to cook dinner, but I refused. At this point, the twins were about 6 months old, and the boys were 2 and 5. I won't lie and say I felt nothing for them, but it was hard to look them in the eyes, and I realized I could no longer be their father. I knew it would break them, but I couldn't stand hearing the word daddy anymore, because every time it felt like a knife to the heart. I kept my composure and revealed nothing. My mother also kept quiet because she thought I had come to my senses. I talked to a lawyer, wanting to remove myself from the birth certificates, and thought I could walk away cleanly since we weren't married. But after analyzing the documents and finances, it turned out that because of our intertwined finances and the fact that I had taken on the role of a father, I would be obligated to pay child support, at least for the boys. Plus, she would get a share of the house and my side businesses. Essentially, the lawyer said I would be giving away about 25% of my income for many years. I just walked out on the lawyers after the first payment because I hated the idea of being an officially registered cuckold. That's when the revenge began. I started planning my disappearance and a plan to leave them with nothing. The first step was to destroy my passive income sources and get myself fired. Getting fired was easy, though cringy. I smashed an office printer in the courtyard. While working remotely, I did nothing but send memes to my colleagues. I didn't touch the clients because my boss was a friend of mine. No, my colleagues had fun watching me. After that, I didn't even try to file for unemployment and started living off my savings. My ex-fiancée trusted me with the finances, even though everything was in both our names, so she didn't notice the accounts gradually emptying and everything going to hell. I left her a couple of thousand in the account, and the credit card debt skyrocketed because I stopped paying. LOL. For a few months, I wondered if it would all end like it did for my father, but in the end, I decided no. I ordered DNA tests to find the children's real fathers and take them away from her, but the results turned out to be even stranger. The oldest turned out to be a cousin or half-brother to the others, meaning the brother of that prisoner had apparently impregnated her. That's where the investigation ended. I also began to distance myself from my mother because I started feeling sickened by what she did to my father and how she was now supporting a cheater. I came up with a plan to go very far away, simply disappearing during a hiking trip. I actively promoted this trip and said I would be alone in the mountains for a week. Before leaving, I took the 6-year-old out for ice cream and cried for the second time in my adult life. He was in shock, trying to comfort me. I was likely crying because I had to leave him, and I apologized dozens of times, but he simply didn't understand what was happening. I was most worried about losing the connection with him because, even though he isn't mine, I had still grown attached to him. That day, I left and actually checked into a cabin. I'll skip a lot of the details after that. I'm not sure if it was legal or not, but 6 months later, I had a new name, a new life in a different city, and I was building an IT career again. I started stalking my ex on Facebook and social media. Honestly, it felt good. The chaos of her trying to gain access to the accounts was hell for her. And she quickly realized that our comfortable finances weren't so comfortable. Begging on Facebook is pathetic as hell. I won't go into the legal details again, but I was actively being searched for, and I thought about calling the police to say I was alive, but I didn't. In the end, I had to pay a large fine, but it was worth it. I worked on myself for a long time, got into great shape, and dove into hedonism. I became unrecognizable. I continued watching her for a year until I found out she had a new boyfriend and got pregnant by him almost immediately. Of course, my mother was still around and helping with my children. And then, on the anniversary of my disappearance, she created a memorial page for me. That's when I decided the revenge wasn't over yet, and I called my brother to tell him I was alive. We had grown apart over the last 10 years, but he had always supported me in childhood. I told him everything and asked him not to tell anyone yet. He agreed. But then he told me that my mother and ex-fiancé were suing the insurance company to get a payout. She had somehow continued paying the policy premiums. The payout was huge, a 7-figure sum. Plus, they would have refunded all her premiums. But I'm not some savage out to scam an insurance company, so I started acting. I drove about 1,600 kilometers back to the old city when I found out about the hearing, listening to Highway to Hell half the way. I arrived at the court early and sat down. I had a beard by then. I had lost 27 kilograms and looked normal. I had changed so much that my fiancé and mother walked right past me without recognizing me. I thought everything would take place in a large courtroom and planned to burst in and shout something about an objection. But they went into a small room with the insurance company's lawyers. I decided, whatever, and knocked. When I opened the door, everyone was stunned to see some bearded hobo. I just said, I assume you're trying to resolve the question of whether I'm dead. My ex recognized me immediately and gasped. The lawyers were in a stupor. Everyone went out, chaos ensued, and the bailiffs were called. My ex screamed and slapped me. She was even put in handcuffs. This turned out to be a serious matter for the insurance company. Management arrived, statements were taken, even a detective showed up, and I started to regret coming, but I gave my testimony. I didn't really lie. I just didn't specify where I lived. I stayed in town for almost a month. I lived in a cheap motel, showing evidence of her cheating to anyone who wanted to see it. I tried to meet with the children, but the twins didn't know me, and the 7-year-old told me, "Go to hell," which was fair enough. The police were furious. Civil lawsuits for the search costs began. A detective even flew in from another state. I wasn't arrested, fortunately, because I didn't provide fingerprints. In the end, I paid a large fine in cash, which surprised them. For me, I was done with that city. My ex filed a civil lawsuit against me on a bunch of counts. My mother helped her, but I was long gone. I returned to the new city and don't plan on ever going back. A few months after ruining her plans with the insurance company, I stopped following them and moved on with my life. This was several years ago. Now, everything is much better for me, but I'm tired and want to sleep. If people are interested, I'll tell you what happened next. Update. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the interest in my life. I want to make only one update and lay everything out as it is. Mostly, I just wanted to tell you where life has taken me, because many were interested. I might answer a couple of questions in the comments if someone has a really burning curiosity. I won't explain exactly how to disappear because we can't discuss potential crimes here. But look up the story of Jack Barsky, the former KGB spy who entered the US and got documents. Literally millions of illegal immigrants do this to work in the US. Uncle Sam mostly cares that you pay your taxes. I don't know the details of the insurance investigation or exactly how they searched for me, but I was never even called before we met in person. I no longer have any intention of taking revenge because I now believe that violent delights have violent ends. As I understand it, my ex-fiancé's life is hard enough as it is, and any further actions from me would only hurt the children. After the fallout with the insurance company and my ex, I left town. Stopped talking to my brother, and even stopped following her life. Starting everything from scratch without family or friends is lonely and scary, but at the same time, it gives hope. How did I restart my life in the new city? I had a lot of cash, which I lived on in a motel for several months while I sorted out documents and looked for a job. I thought my home computer would be checked after my disappearance, so I couldn't plan everything properly in advance. I realized that without a degree tied to your name, finding a job with my skills is difficult. So I decided to start my own company and posted ads for custom dispatch software development, video editing, presentations, and more. There wasn't much work, and it didn't even cover my expenses. But after several orders from the same company, I befriended a project manager and got a job with a normal salary. Now my income is about 70% of what it used to be, but I'm okay with that. I spent a lot of time talking to people with similar stories and eventually ended up in a corresponding community, men going their own way. Essentially, we were constantly bashing women, and this cycle made me quite bitter and misogynistic. It got to the point where I was creating fake accounts to troll women online. I don't want to go into the details, I'm ashamed of it now. I signed up for Tinder and started actively sleeping around, making up for lost time, throwing money around, and lying became the norm for me. I cheated on practically every woman because I thought they were all doing the same thing. I would get caught, and I'd pretend I didn't understand why they were angry until they left or tried to forgive me, only for me to do it again. I'm not proud of this either. A couple of years ago, one of the women I was regularly sleeping with got pregnant and happily told me about it. I immediately accused her of cheating and kicked her out of the apartment. The look on her face was total shock. Remember, I thought I was sterile, so in my mind, I was just putting another tramp in her place. For a while, I continued to mock her and even wrote about it to my friends in that community. I directly admitted to her that I was cheating and showed her proof. I agreed to a paternity test during the pregnancy, just so she wouldn't drag me to court. And the result shocked me. I cried and tried to hug her. She screamed, threw some papers at me, and said she never wanted to see me again. I went home and got drunk. I was happy that I was going to be a father for real this time, and at the same time, I hated myself for who I had become. As I said, don't worry about me. I'm a bad person. For the remainder of the pregnancy, she didn't talk to me at all, and I completely understood her. When the girl was born, I went to the hospital to sign the birth certificate and simultaneously meet with her lawyer, her sister, to discuss child support, which we had already talked about. I went to the bank and offered to sign any papers if she would just agree to have coffee with me for 30 minutes so I could explain everything. She wanted full custody and generous payments. I didn't hire a lawyer because I wanted to make amends and thought a lawyer would only get in the way. We met for coffee, and to my surprise, she let me talk for almost 20 minutes without interrupting. I didn't tell her the whole truth about my past, but she understood why I wanted the paternity test. However, she didn't forgive my behavior, the mockery, the fact that I kicked her out, and the cheating. I signed the documents but begged her to let me see my daughter and be part of her life. She said I was unstable and had to go through serious therapy before that would even be possible. I agreed. Therapy taught me a lot, and I studied the consequences of infidelity extensively. It turned out that so many women have suffered from cheaters, and my view of women had been toxic. I stopped interacting with the men's community because I realized it was hindering my progress. I don't want to attack that community. There are normal people there, just broken and looking for answers. But the birth of my daughter was a powerful blow that forced me to reconsider my attitude toward women. I was able to see my daughter when she was 7 months old and began seeing her under supervision every other weekend. I paid child support faithfully and tried to mend relations with her mother. One evening, after a visit with my daughter, we got drunk, started kissing, and it turned into intimacy. In the morning, she felt awkward. She asked me to leave, but there was a feeling that she might want to try again. A lot of time has passed, but eventually we moved in together after she lost her job due to the pandemic, and now we live together. Her family hates me. Because of this, we don't talk about marriage. Damn, I even missed my daughter's second birthday because her lawyer sister didn't want to see me. I hope everything works out, and I realize I already have more than I deserve. Now I work from home, And my girlfriend stays with our daughter and cooks. She still doesn't trust me and often checks in to see what I'm doing, but it doesn't bother me. I'm just trying to be there for my daughter and somehow make up for what I did to her mother. I still go to online therapy and do everything I can. I don't think I'll ever be able to tell all of this to anyone in person, so I decided to tell it to strangers on the internet. I'm sorry to those who thought I was a hero after the first post. Please, don't let hatred simmer inside you, friends. I almost missed something important in life, and I could still lose it if I'm not careful. This will be the only update unless I return years from now to tell you what happened next. Good luck to everyone. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Check out our previous videos, which you can see right here. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. Bye-bye.